So here's a kind of funny realization I thought I'd share about me. I've shared with you guys my different weaknesses and stuff. If you're new to my channel, my biological mother was schizophrenic, and I've dealt with paranoia a lot of my life, which limits the kinds of situations I can get myself into. I found that anxiety triggers the paranoia, and small church situations or corporate America triggers my paranoia and social anxiety, to where I start filling in the blanks and thinking these people are plotting against me or thinking about me. It just sort of builds up over time, and before you know it, you've just gone completely crazy. And the temptation is to respond to all these things that you know aren't true, but you can't shake it. Like, you know that's not rational, but probably super. And boy, in the church situation, I used to think that the pastor was talking about me in his entire sermon every time. And sometimes he was, because I would react to my paranoia, and that's where I would create the messes. So I created a lot of messes by responding to paranoia. People are like, what? And, I used to think that the church was having meetings about me, and then I started acting weird enough that eventually they did start having meetings about me. So all my fears always came upon me. It's really interesting. I was like Job in that respect. Everything, I spent my whole time fearing that this was happening, and then it eventually would start happening, because the enemy was using that fear as bait to get me to trigger a trap. And I've set all the traps. I've tripped all the traps, in my life. And eventually I realized this is a mental condition. And then when I found out my biological mother was schizophrenic, it was just a huge load off my mind. And not only that, but she was a servant of the Lord. And when she was in her right mind, God used her pretty mightily in her circle. And so that was good news to find out that God doesn't hold this against us. I used to have all kinds of condemnation because of the way I would act when I would react to the paranoia. It'd build up over a couple months, and then I'd have a complete freak out anxiety attack and accuse everybody this and that, try to defend myself, and they're like, what are you talking about? And then I would think they were lying, But then when you add the supernatural dimension to it, and you think the Holy Spirit is giving people word of knowledge about you, and God's plotting against you because you're not that clear yet, you're still under all this condemnation, or you think the enemy is, orchestrating this huge thing through all these people. I went through all that, and it added, you can't even imagine the terror I lived under for years, especially in the charismatic church, where the authority was all about, like, touch not God's anointed, and there were threats all the time, about implied threats about if you go against the authority and blah blah blah. And then I would think, they think I'm against the authority, and then I would express my concern to someone, and they'd go back and report it to the pastor, and then sure enough, now I am in rebellion. It just went on and on and on. I had anxiety attacks. It destroyed my marriage. Then I got into a cult where it was, I shouldn't keep calling it a cult. It was a little church, and it consisted mostly of Chinese people, and the teaching was partly Orthodox and partly not Orthodox. And the parts that was not Orthodox was really brought us into bondage, and the part that was really good drew us to the Lord. So it was a mix. But the dynamic for me, other people, they were fine because they were Chinese, but for me, it was very difficult to survive a situation like that. And I did it for 8 years. And you're spending 35 hours a week with these people. We were with each other all the time because we were trying to do something, spiritual. Anyway, Chinese people are not the most expressive. And so for a paranoid person, when you're with people who are not expressive, that know how to have a good poker face and don't reveal what they really feel on their face, that's their culture. They communicate through many more sophisticated levels of subtle communications that they know how to pick up on. They're very smart, and it's actually beautiful in some respects. Their culture is beautiful. But for me, it was a breeding ground for my paranoia, and it got really bad. And I blew up. When I left the church, I blew it up. I mean, I completely freaked out. And it's a good thing that I left. I wish I hadn't left that way. I miss those people, but I can't talk to them again really in a healthy way, because that context rules our relationships, if you know what I mean. Okay, so there's all that, And finally, I quit corporate America, and I quit everything related to all this stress and anxiety. I just couldn't take it physically anymore. And now I do weddings, and I play piano, and sometimes that's a little stressful, but it's nothing like all that stuff, And no, I don't make as much money at all, and I usually have to find some other way of supporting myself through something, But I'm much better now, because I'm not living in these environments that trigger all this stuff in me. But it's still there. If I were to go back into those environments, I'm pretty sure that stuff would come out. The other thing that I realize is that I can be pretty manic depressive, and I don't know if it's clinical, but I get myself going in a million different directions at once. I get all inspired and think I can take the world, and I can just really do something, and I'll get spinning a whole lot of plates when I get into this stage. So this time I did a jazz trio album. I assembled my hammer string album. I wrote all the songs for the jazz trio album. Then I did I was going to do a electronica album, and I had like 5 or 6 pieces. And then I was about to write an album for piano and solos tenor sax. And then I was doing Romans and turning my Hebrews messages into a book. And so tons of hours of transcribing messages and editing them to get that ready for the book. And then I had a bunch of people reading one of my old books to make it into an audio book. And I was about to add Genesis to the plate. I was going to start double timing, doing Romans and Genesis at the same time. And then I hit that busy wedding season where I've got like 13 events this month. Well, eventually something was going to have to give. And when it does, I crash really hard. All of a sudden, because I've been spinning so hard, and it's starting to frazzle. I'm expending all my energy, and I'm getting nothing back out of it, seemingly. Then I just go, I can't do this anymore, and I stop it all, and I get really depressed and super sad. And I didn't really realize this was a pattern, but I've been going on like this for about 2 months. And my wife was like, yeah, you do this. And when you do, I just sort of stand back and watch and wait, And last night I realized, okay, the depression, I'm crashing. This is my cycle. This isn't just some weird attack from the enemy. This is actually what I do. And it's funny because I have a conversation thread with Petra, sorry, I misspoke her name, Petra Renatus, and somebody else, and it's like a prayer. We fellowship. We're good friends, and sometimes I'll send them prayer requests. Yesterday, and they sent me prayer requests. Yesterday, I told them I'm really depressed. I'm really sad. I'm feeling feelings of futility. I don't know why. I just feel so burnt out. And then later in the thread, they prayed for me, and I felt better. And this was after I'd done that video. Then I sent him an email saying, here, I was talking to my wife, and this is what I do. It's a kind of a manic cycle. And Petra goes, yeah, maybe just do the Roman study now and don't embark on Genesis too. And I just burst out laughing because I'd forgotten that I was also going to add Genesis to the play because I was focusing on the piano sax album. Oh my gosh. So I'm just confessing to you guys that this is what I do. This is my weakness, and God lets me be this way. On the one hand, He uses me in my lane. I have to stay in my lane. But on the other hand, you'll see me start spinning, And Petra was like, I knew you seemed awfully busy. I don't know what to say about it, and I'm not going to say I'm not going to do this again. All I'm hoping is that when I do it, when the bottom drops out and I go into the depressive stage, I can remember, oh yeah, this is what I do. Because realizing this is what I do snapped me out of the depression. That's what I kind of want to share, is that sometimes you just got to take account of what you are, and don't try to overcome it, don't try to fix it. Realize that there are certain things about you that this is what you are, this is what you do. And you know what? Those manic stages God actually uses. I mean, I'm almost done with the Hebrews book, and that's going to be really edifying. A couple people have read through it and said, wow, And the Roman study's pretty good, and maybe I will do a solo piano, a piano sax thing. I don't know. But I need to pace myself and cry uncle when I start adding too much, and I don't know how to gauge that, because when I'm doing it, I just feel super energized and all excited, So that's just a little about me. You have an insight into my mental conditions. Hope it doesn't undermine your ability to receive the teachings when they come. But yeah, and even Pastor so-and-so, when I get into a stage where I'm like getting down, I get super sensitive. And so someone said, someone didn't understand. And I may need to clarify, if I do Pastor so-and-so again, I'll do it with a caveat that this is a joke, I'm not sure. We'll see if I even do it. But yeah, just get super sensitive and everything. And I'm the kind of person that goes to extremes and overreactions and makes about faces and goes in new directions where it's like you go, oh, there he goes again, My life has been very colorful as a result of the extremes that I go to whenever I get going. And then I'll have a couple months of just absolute nothing and feeling down. And I'm hoping to avoid that this year. Seems like it's once a year that this happens. So, all right. Should I have shared this? Was it wise? I don't know. Talk to you later.